All right, welcome everybody. I'll confirm the agenda from the chair. Apologies, we do have a apology from Pania. A note that she is not a member of the committee, but she has phoned and asked for her apology to be noted. So be happy to do that. No other apologies. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Thank you. Move to the minutes of the meeting of 15th of April. Any amendments or corrections? Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Thank you. In your report 2024. Chris Jenner will be joining us online. Welcome, Stephanie.
Purpose of
I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait and see if Chris is joining. Otherwise, you might have to repeat yourself, Steve. Welcome, Chris.
Afternoon, Ross. How are you?
Hi, very good. All right, we're ready. Stephanie, thank you for your paper.
the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with the report to council provided by Audit New Zealand on the completion of the audit of the 2024 annual report for council and its subsidiaries. The management have had a chance to review the report and comment prior to its issue. Key issues identified in the report were the issuing of the accept for opinion in relation to the performance measure for smooth travel exposure, which was the same measure that we had an accept for opinion on in the previous year. There were 8 new recommendations. 1 we've since resolved, so there's a remaining 4 that none were urgent. So there's 4 necessary and 3 desirable. There were 5 uncorrected misstatements which were all deemed to be material and were discussed with Audit New Zealand, and we determined not to make adjustments for these misstatements. There has been a bit of a delay in receiving the management report, so some of the actions will not be able to be actioned prior to the 2025 annual report being prepared. And I'd now like to hand over to Chris Jenner, Auditor General, Audit New Zealand, to comment.
Thanks, Stephanie. Chris.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm not quite the Auditor General, I'm the Audit Director. But
oh, sorry.
Promotion.
Thanks very much. I think Stephanie's covered most there. I suppose the reports in your pack, the matters are most significant, so I might just touch on briefly at a higher level, noting that we've touched on those in the November Risk and Assurance Committee. They remain unchanged from the discussion we had at that committee. So as Stephanie's mentioned, the opinion itself was an accept for type of qualification. The key thing around that is meaning it's ring-fenced to one thing only. Being that performance measure that we've discussed. There's 2 inputs to that measure, one being a road roughness survey undertaken by someone, and the other part being the traffic counts, the qualifications in relation to the traffic count estimates within that measure. Both some matters that happened within 2023 with the with missing counts or corrupted counts, and in 2024 it was really around the age of the information that underpins the estimates that are made within that information. In terms of the significant matters for the audit outside of that, 3 waters re-evaluation was obviously a key focus area, primarily because of the value of the underlying assets being large, and evaluation being based on a number of assumptions and source data. Our approach focuses around those key assumptions and source data, looking at things like unit rates, and how they align to your own analysis of unit costs, sector-based data we obtain, as well as the reasonableness of useful lives, and checking things like whether all assets have been valued or that assets haven't been double counted within a valuation, for example. We obviously concluded the valuation is appropriate for inclusion in the financial statements. Alongside that, there was a fair value assessment that was prepared before that. That looks at which assets require evaluation each year. The conclusion for that was to revalue Three Waters assets, which happened, and then obviously meaning that no other further valuations were necessary. In my overview, I talk about group accounting, the ICHL sales transactions, of which there were two, one settling prior to 30 June 2024 and the other one spanning balance date. That was a key accounting matter within the group, but primarily dealt with within the Invercargill City Holdings Limited audit. Sale of SGE of Southern Generation was treated as a discontinued operation in the financial statements, and the pending sale of the Pylon Group at the time was assessed for whether it should be treated as an asset held for sale, but concluded it wasn't, given that major transaction approval didn't occur until after year end. So these were disclosed as, that was disclosed as a subsequent event. We reviewed the accounting and disclosures around those and were comfortable that was appropriate. So I think those are the major bits and pieces, but happy to take any questions on the report.
Right, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Stephanie. I guess firstly, from my point of view, thanks to all, this would be probably the smoothest and cleanest process and report that I've been through since I've been involved. So it's well done both to ICC and Audit NZ teams. Take any specific questions to either Stephanie or Chris. Rangi.
Look, my question is with regards to the management comment on this smoothness, traffic smoothness. It's about the, they've used a couple of abbreviations, VKT and STE. Throughout the rest of the commentary, they explain what the other ones are, but I've got no idea what VKT and STE mean.
STE would be smooth travel exposure. VKT, volume of traffic count. Would it be, Chris?
It's volume of kilometres travelled. It's an input within the measure.
Volume kilometres travelled.
We'll double check that.
Grant?
Yeah, vehicle kilometres travelled, that is, Rangi.
Right, okay, thank you.
Grant?
Yeah, on page 14 of the report, or 28 on board books, just the comment around the risk of management override. Should we see anything at governance level around those management overrides? Chris?
I think this is a question for me. So the risk of management override is there in all audits. It's there as a standard item under audit standards by definition. So generally what we're doing here is looking at areas where management have the opportunity to override, not necessarily that there's any motivation, but it's just that the opportunity is there. So things like journal entries, for example, and making sure that we perform procedures that mitigate that risk. So that's what that's telling you there. Did that answer your question, or?
No, it didn't. I'm interested to know whether at governance level we should be seeing those areas that are at risk of management override, and then if there's any materiality to any of those areas, i.e. has been a matter.
So I think the risks there, I talk around journal systems, audit estimates, and significant transactions. They're naturally things that would come through to council and looking at their own internal controls or reviewing their own estimates that sit within an annual report. So they come through in different places, but I'd expect you'd want to have a good process around those.
For your chair, I wouldn't expect that the governance level would ever see the journals. We might do, what are we at, 150,000?
No,
roughly a year. So
I'm not saying see the journals. I'm saying the management override of the areas. What Chris said, talked to is that there's some areas they're aware of that have potential for management override.
So if you look at page 28 of Board Books, Councillor, it says to address the risk, they have tested journals. So Audit New Zealand considered the fact that we do journals within our accounting system as a major area where management override could occur. So as I said, I wouldn't expect to give governance level a full breakdown of how we do journals. We have a journal checking policy, so every journal that's put by the team is reviewed by another one. The other two spots that they have raised here is the review of audit estimates for bias and valuations and the business rationale on any significant transactions. Most significant transactions have come through different committees as they come through. The valuations will come through before they, hopefully the timing will work on the major valuation for this year, that you will see the output of that valuation being land and buildings before it ends up in the annual report. If not, you see it in the draft annual report. So we do bring the information through to you in a number of different ways. Admittedly, it is not wrapped up in a bow that says this is about management override, but we are bringing through different aspects.
Grant, you're looking for a higher level assurance,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah.
There's also within the management representation letter that management provide to governance each year in the signing off of the annual report. That makes there's a representation in there, Chris, isn't there, around override and management around estimates as well, if I remember correctly.
There's definitely one around the appropriateness of estimates and information underpinning them. But, you know, provision of all information, there's quite a bit in there.
Michael.
Through yourself, Chair, maybe I can give some more clarity to the councillor, which is we have a multiple number of processes and policies in place. That is something I cast my mind to 4 years ago when I came in the organisation. We've put in a number of policies across the organisation and processes to ensure that we have the processes internally, but we also have that reporting mechanism. There'll be another one in relation to getting risks reporting back up and going again today, so that's on the agenda today. But they come through into this committee in relation to your finance risk update, your procurement update, your internal controls. So there's a number. The other one which Patricia highlighted was the significance policy as well, where anything that's of a significant nature comes back before the council. They come up in different areas, but they all come back through council if they're of a significant nature or departure from the policies.
Thank you. I have got Leslie, but I have got Trish, but Leslie or Tom, did you have something on this particular item?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. So a question for Chris. This is the subject we've just talked about, management override of internal controls, is a generic risk for every business, and you mentioned that in the report. Could you just give us some comfort that you see nothing in this organisation that suggests that risk is any higher here than anywhere else?
I don't see any heightened risk, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. My question got answered by what the staff have said. Thanks.
Trish.
In relation to fraud policy on Board Books, page 31, it says that we need to update it with regular reviews, and the management have said it will be considered in the next review of the fraud policy. I'd like to know when that is.
It'll be in the next 12 to 18 months. We've just got to program it in with the full reviews of all our policies, so we will do it it'll be ahead of the LTP.
Right. Will it be done before the next audit report?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions. I'll ask for someone please to move the two recommendations. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Leslie. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against, abstentions carried. Thank you very much. Again, thank you both Chris and Stephanie for your work this year. Let's look forward to a smooth coming 12 months too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Move to health and safety and wellbeing. Tash, welcome, and Trudy. Thanks for your paper, which we will take as being read and let you give us any high-level comments.
Well, you may have seen a small drop in incident and injuries being reported during this period. You'll notice that the near miss and risk reporting has been consistent. I think that this shows that we've got an awareness and a willingness to speak up about health and safety. And just of note, 2/3 of the first-time EAP usage in the past 12 months has been for personal concerns. So I think that shows the importance of having this service available to support our staff. Any questions?
I wonder if the speaker could pull the microphone forward a little bit. It's just
Testing.
Questions for Tash? Bobby.
Two things. On page 56 of Board Books, it talks about the forest management court case. And it raises some issues to me because I've got the full court judgment, and it highlights 2 or 3 things which you can relate to council work. It talks about pre-harvesting health and safety plans that were put into a parent company that owns the forest. And so that's a little bit like a roading contractor putting in a health and safety plan for up. 2 things that came out of that thing. One was they felt the reports were too static and that wasn't unique to a particular site. And I just wonder whether that's something we need to be alerted to, that different parts of a roading network are, or a Three Waters network are different. Other issue was the issue that once you have a contractor working on a plan that you safety, you just can't assume that they're doing it in their own right. That's what came out of the court. Part of our thinking going forward, that if we accept a contract,
We probably pass to our colleague, Erin Mugan.
Thank you, through the chair. It's one of the things that we've had a real focus on the last 12 to 18 months. I would say prior to that, we have not had enough auditing of our contracts, but it's something that we've been doing significantly more of in recent months. Some of our projects are as high as weekly, depending on the risk, and other elements will drop lower and will generally sit around that monthly. Now, obviously, that's always subject to what we've got around resource and things like that. We're still building capability in that space, but it is definitely something that's underway.
Ria.
Thank you. My question is to page 61 of the dashboard of health and safety. And in the graph that you're provided with the near misses report, the key there shows it's either contractor or ICC. I note the contractor near misses going down. What I do note, though, is that we don't know which contractor that is. So how do we know what this data is relative to? From roading to swimming pool.
For you,
there's
Chair.
no clear indicative margin there.
This dashboard is just an overview of it. It does have the ability to be broken down, but then that would be probably about 8 different pages that you would receive if you wanted it broken down further. We do have the ability to do that.
Right, okay. Might be something to look at for the future.
Michael, do you want to touch on that, please?
Yes, through yourself, Chair. I would just caution Council on wanting to break that down any further than the summarised level. Obviously, from an operational point of view, we do, and monitor it at our level. But if we broke it down any further, then that would expose us to issues around contractual arrangements with those particular suppliers. It's when they go to a red status that we'd bring that to a council and when we've got concerns. So absolutely, we're monitoring it and we will bring it back to council as we see those concerns coming through.
If I could, Mr. Chair, completely understand where you're coming from, Michael. I guess we're aware from a governance side, I wouldn't like to be surprised by things that happen in our community and it's not even in front of us. So the reason why I am questioning that or asking for the information is that often we find out, and I understand that you cast your eyes over, I totally get that, but for us to receive it at times after we've read it in the media is not actually acceptable.
Look, I note your comment, Ria. I did note at the last meeting that if there are any major risks that they are identified to council, that is notifiable risks, and I think that would be the case. But I'll just ask Michael to note that going forward. Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 58 of board books, around the contractor oversee health and safety reporting period for April to May, the contractor, and it's got psychosocial. Could you give us an example of what?
So those ones there, that has been abuse to the bin inspectors.
Pardon?
Abuse to the bin inspectors.
Oh, right. Okay.
And there was also one where it was a person was installing a culvert, and someone from down the road came down and abused him as well. Verbal abuses.
So that's obviously a concern. I'm probably just trying to understand is where does the responsibility sit to provide a safe environment for that worker? We'll initially be with the contractor, but at what point do we get involved as council, I suppose? See, like, do the contractors lodge those? Sorry, Trudy.
Oh no, that's right.
Contractors lodge those complaints through our, customer service desk to say, hey, look, this has happened. Or?
So each contractor carries out their own, in terms of their own reporting, and then they pass that reporting on to us so that we're aware. What we do is try to mitigate risk as much as possible, but you can't eliminate the risk of this type of behaviour. And
you could, but you wouldn't do it.
And we try to do as much as possible to support, for example, with employees. We do training around de-escalation and managing those types of events. And I'm cognizant I can't speak for different contractors, but it's quite common now to do that de-escalation and managing poor behaviour training.
Gee, on page 61, just drop off in the infrastructure safety audits completed. Is that drop off?
I think there's 10 less than there was in the last reporting period. That would just be with contract management, how long they go out. If a contract's ended, then of course they wouldn't be doing that audit anymore.
Okay, so it correlates with the contract end. So
yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Erin, did you want to jump in?
Yes, sorry, just to go back to the previous one, just around the bin inspections. And I would just note that it is one that we are monitoring really closely. Council, or WasteNet, sorry, I should say, has historically had a process of bin inspections, and that was discontinued some years ago on around concerns around health and safety of those undertaking it. It was something that was strongly requested from WasteNet for those inspections to be reinstated. And so the team have been working really closely with the contractor around trying to make sure that we're able to keep those staff safe and that we've got appropriate frameworks around it. But it is one that we need to monitor really closely. And if we start to see that getting out of hand, we're going to need to report back and see whether or not we make a change in that space.
Nobby.
I'm just on page 55. It talks about worker engagement and wellbeing. And I think at the last committee meeting I wrote staff satisfaction survey that was done in 2024, which is last year. Survey. And I guess what it raises for me, because at that particular head was that the survey results were going to be used as a tool to assess the chief executive's performance, which is fine. still don't understand why the overall survey results have not been presented here. Because assessing a senior manager is an okay thing, but I'd also like to know what the well-being in the organisation is, and what the staff are saying about that. Staff or senior management can present the report to us at a future.
Through yourself, Chair, there has been a number of times that I've given verbal updates through to risk and assurance in relation to staffing, wellbeing, etc. It is not on today's agenda, but it is something I can bring to the next risk and assurance meeting.
Right. Thank you. Tom.
You. Back to page 61 and the lag indicator charts, the two charts that are on a traffic light basis, and we're shown as being in green on both of them. Are they normalised for the whole year, or is it basically just 4 months of data but taken over a 12-month period, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, we've started this from the beginning of this year again.
Oh, they say that again.
It's from the beginning of this year.
Yeah, sure. But is it 4 months of data calculated in terms of TRIFR calculated for 4 months? Or
Yes.
does it take the number of accidents and divide it over 12 months?
No, it's for the 4 months.
For the 4 months. Okay, that's good. So the second part of the question, how do we define what's green and what's yellow and what's red? Is that based on just our own internal target setting, or is it based on some external target? And sorry, so I don't have to ask a third question. And if it is an internal target, will we raise stakes next year? Let's suppose we stay in green. Then next year, would green become orange? And put it like that. So that we're continually setting ourselves targets which are more and more difficult as the years pass.
So this is actually done through a benchmark of Forum, which is Health and Safety Government Site New Zealand, and so they had there, which was 3.58, and that was based over 254 million hours worked. So they've set the benchmark, and so we've gone with their benchmark for this year, depending on if they drop theirs. But I mean, it would be good practice that you would always try better it, so next year you would have it slightly less.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Thank you.
There are no further questions. Just look in the room. Could I please ask someone to move?
Aye.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Thank you very much, ladies. Jamie, welcome.
Right.
Thank you for paper and update, and we do know we had Ben Corp here not that long ago too, presenting, so
Yep.
more of an update.
Yep, cool. Okay, so take the report as read. Just a couple of things to highlight. I do mention in the paper that we do have potential 2 breaches in the future for our debt. We are still looking at that and looking at putting some swaps in place to bring that breach back in line. We're just keeping an eye on the markets, especially the stuff that's happening in the Middle East at the moment, if that's having an impact or not as well. The other thing I'd like to highlight is just the average cost of debt, 3.38, still, according to Miles, is the lowest in the country. It has gone up a wee bit since the last report, and that's because of the floating debt. They reset their rates on a quarterly basis, so they got reset in April. Any questions?
Questions for Jamie? Nobby.
Yeah, Jamie, on page 1 of your report, which is 62 of board books, you say the report shows that our core debt went up $18 million since March 2025. Can you give me some idea of why that is? Is that to do with the ICL loan?
No, it's to do with capital funding. So we've drawn down more debt to fund our capital that we've been spending.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jamie. Just with your comment around the take some swaps to avoid the breach. Are we doing that to avoid the breach, or are we doing it because it's the best way to manage our debt?
We look at it, the situation at the time. So if we did take a swap, it would be to solve that potential breach. But because it is a potential breach, the capital program may change before we get there. So we don't want to lock anything in too soon if we know there is potential change in the horizon.
Yeah, so I suppose what I'm trying to understand is if we've seen the opportunity to advantage ourselves around a lower, cost of funding.
Yep.
You'd come obviously back to this, ask for an extension of that breach or acknowledge the breach, and then so that you can get a better.
Yes, yep. If the rates are ready to go, we will jump on it.
Just another question, if I may, Chair. Cost of funding in the LTP?
That was 4.5%.
So do we give consideration to, trying to lock in some long-term debt that sort of...
Yep, our aim is to lock down below that 4.5.
But how long's long?
It can range between 3 to 5. We haven't really gone higher than 5, although we are potentially looking at a swap that goes to 7 potentially to cover these two breaches. But we assess that at the time, and depending what the swap market rates are at that stage as well.
Because their policy allows us to go to 10, right?
Yes. Yep.
Ringy.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure if this is for Jamie, probably the Chair actually. Financial risks. Is this an item for financial risks? Currently, we have an infrastructure situation where we declined an option for the Bluff wastewater that was in the LTP and decided to roll the dice on the new water regulations. Now, what I'm asking is that's not looking too healthy at the moment, and potentially could be a solution once we're actually going for an interim consent, but eventually in the next 2 years we will have to finalise the consent, and this could be up, instead of being 7 million, it could be 60 million. Where does this committee get interested in something that could come back and haunt us quite badly?
I would expect Michael to bring that to our attention at the earliest opportunity. Michael.
Yeah, through yourself, Chair, that would actually come through in relation to a project risk, not through this financial risk. Obviously, it would manifest as a financial risk to council should there be a major issue in relation to project, but it would first go through your infrastructure and projects in relation to that and be highlighted there. Your project decisions, that would feed into our financial strategy, and therefore if there's any deviation from that, then it falls into our financial risk updates. So it's if it's a landed project and that occurs, then that would be displayed as an item that would come through this committee from that perspective.
So there's a good process through that. Tom.
Yeah, so just going back to the chart that Grant referred to in page 2 of your report. I mean, it seems to me that that's a good example of where if you slavishly followed a policy, you'd have a perverse outcome. We don't want to follow that policy. So, I mean, I wondered more generically, is it sensible to have a policy ban for, a lower ban for swaps as much as 4 years out?
I'll pass that to Patricia.
For you, Chair. It's an interesting one. In the last 4 years, we have actually knowingly been outside of policy for probably 3 of those, because we were waiting and for something. The market, the yield curves moved in 4 years, so now swaps are the most appropriate for us to use. But as Jamie said, because these are forward-looking breaches, it's very much reliant on capital delivery, because that's what our debt profile is based on. So these are still relatively low benchmarks, and their policy is set quite low, so we don't have to have a huge amount of fixed interest. and cover. Yes, we can go up to 100%. So we've probably got, I think, the settings about right, and we do ask Bancorp every year to give us an advice on whether the settings of the policy are right, what they're seeing. So I don't think we want to change that policy setting. Whether we take forward, and these long swaps that Jamie's talking about are forward starts, so they are maybe, were they 3-year swaps starting in 2, or was it
Yes.
4 years starting in 3? So there is a lot amount of risk with those, and what we're finding is that very long debt that Councillor Dermody was referring to is actually much higher rate than what we've got in the long-term plan. So at the moment, we are taking a more short-term approach to the debt and rolling it through quite regularly.
Sorry, just to follow up question. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I think what you're saying is that in the, you know, when you're talking about 3 or 4 years out, then it might be appropriate, as you are doing, to take a pragmatic approach rather than to, you know, follow a policy that doesn't quite fit the situation. And but it does mean that we, you know, continue to look at charts where we get outside of policy, and therefore, you know, you could drive perverse behaviour. So I guess you've answered it, Patricia, but you know, my point would be, and my invitation, I suppose, would be to ask the question whether it is sensible to have a policy 4 years out when you have a practice which tends to be pragmatic rather than driven by, you know, a policy which is quite long term actually for swaps. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. No further questions. Then could I please ask someone to please move the resolution, receive the paper. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Tom. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against, abstentions carried. Thank you very much. From the chair, I'll move that we move to public excluded. That was seconded, please. Thank you, Grant. All those in favour, please say aye. Sorry.
Through self-chair, can I just request that you note that we've got Nick Hamlin, who's the project director of Te Anua with us, so if he can remain in for the public exclusion.
I'll include that in the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstention.